again, everyone. There's not a whole lot to update on astrologically speaking, except to check in and kind of see where you're all at with the eclipse energy. I know for me, I didn't really equate it until today. I record my podcasts on Mondays so that I can schedule them and have them uploaded so that they're available on Tuesdays. But I did not fully connect the energy of the eclipse from what I was feeling over the weekend, and it was a doozy. But astrologically speaking, there's not really a whole lot going on this week, but since my podcasts come out on Tuesdays, I'll update you and tell you that on Monday, April 7th, Mercury is finally going direct again, so we won't have any more delays with travel plans. Hopefully no more issues with technology. Hopefully no more issues with miscommunication or anything like that. Let all of those cobwebs clear away. But on today's episode, I want to talk about my experience with psychedelics and how, where I was once a supporter for plant and alternative medicine, I now am an advocate for it. So in April of 2023, I took my first journey with psilocybin. Since then, I use it still occasionally for added benefits to my healing journey. It's another tool that I have in my toolbox, the same way that meditation, journaling, tarot cards, oracle cards, all of that stuff is. I'll get into my story and the benefits I saw and continue to see, as well as my trip experience, but I want to share some of my research and important information about the use and the benefits of plant medicine first. There are several different plants that are common that we use for medicine. Cannabis has been used for cancer treatment patients and for the treatment of Parkinson's disease. There has been research on the use of DMT for Alzheimer's, and psilocybin is being tested for treatment of complex PTSD. I am treading lightly with these claims because although I don't have a big platform or anything like that, I want people to make their own conscious decisions based solely on the information. I have heard and read a lot about all of these uses and believe they can be more helpful than other means of treatment for some people. But I remember it's similar to how maybe for you, ibuprofen will help with your headache, but for me, it may not. It's all trial and error, even the medicines our Western doctors are using. I just personally would prefer to try natural methods before using the man-made creations. Plant medicine has been used since the beginning of time. We have written evidence on Egyptian papyrus dating back to 1550 BC that speaks of medicinal plants and contains over 700 formulas and prescriptions using various herbs and plants. Figs are mentioned in the Bible as a cure for a boil. Native American tribes still to this day use tobacco as a medicine when ingested from the plant without all of the chemicals and the processing that we do to it now. We can see herbs and plants being used daily in our lives. Eating a salad typically makes you feel healthier than eating a greasy burger, right? Cordyceps are becoming more popular for their aid in boosting energy and helping the immune system. So, what about the plants that can just so happen to alter our perception of reality? Why are those in particular considered bad and made illegal for us to use? Ayahuasca is a combination of two plants that creates an entire experience for us, but those plants both grow naturally in South America. Cannabis can be grown indoors or outdoors, but is still considered illegal in many states. Why have these medicines been removed from our medicine bags? The war on drugs has been happening for over 50 years. While Nixon may have used the high usage rates of troops returning from Vietnam to push his agenda, to this day we see people being treated like criminals for looking to alternative means of medicine. This war on drugs has done very little to curb the consumption or the trade of it. In fact, we now have several epidemics from man-made drugs while still claiming the naturally grown ones are the enemy. I have personal experience with THC and psilocybin myself, and can attest to the calming effects that they have helped with me to ease my discomfort and pain that I didn't even realize that I was holding on to, both mentally and physically. While my first journey with psilocybin was to intentionally have the full experience of the mushrooms, I now find that microdosing is beneficial for helping me break through some emotional barriers and ease tension and anxiety, while low doses of THC helps me sleep better and have a better outlook on life. Both have done nothing for me but show me that all that matters is love. In the past, I have been prescribed different medicines for surgeries that I've had. Most of them have been opioids, and most of which I ended up refusing to take during my healing from those surgeries. I really liked the way they made me feel, and I didn't like the way that made me feel. I have an addictive personality. There is a lot of substance abuse and addiction in my family, so I'm typically mindful of that for myself. I am a recovering alcoholic right now. Recovering thanks to psilocybin, but I'll go more into that later. So, I was able to notice the effects those drugs had on me. I find, though, with psychedelics, I don't have the same level of desire for the high or the drunk as I did with the man-made or doctor-prescribed medicines. So, more about my journey. With psilocybin, a microdose is typically under 250 milligrams, which is less than your usual ibuprofen. A mini to a normal dose of psilocybin, where you are starting to sort of get the fun high psychedelic effects, is typically from 250 milligrams up to about 3 grams. And anywhere beyond that is a real trip where you will likely experience your warped reality, time dilation, hallucinations, ego death, and euphoria. I myself chose to do pi, 3.14 grams. I knew that I wasn't going to have the full heroic experience with that, but I also took into account how my body metabolizes things and my frame, my weight, height, all of that sort of things whenever I took my dose of the psilocybin. I know of people who went true heroic and have done a 5 gram or more dose as well, but for this episode, I will only share my experience. I consumed the tea made from the psilocybin mushrooms with the comfort of what they call in the industry a trip sitter, who is someone who is there to be a guide and support you through your journey, typically someone with experience with the medicines who can ease you through the journey itself. As I sort of expected, the effects were pretty quick for me, and before I knew it, the windmills that were off in the distance outside the window started dancing, and then all of a sudden I was curled up in a ball on the floor of the room I was staying in. The trip itself was unexplainable the same way a dream is, but I will try to explain it how I can. I can still envision it vividly when I think about it to this day, and that journey was nearly 2 years ago. I can't tell you how it actually began, but I can tell you that I recognized I was caught in a thought loop and can tell you how that began. I had experience where I felt like I was walking through the 5D, where I could see almost 360 degrees around me without even moving my head. I encountered what I now see as guardians or guides, but they looked very similar to gray aliens. I focused on the flipper of my penguin, which created flamingos in my vision that danced me into this beautiful meadow. The experience was like nothing I've ever had. But I was able to recognize that I was in a thought loop because I would feel as though I'd done something before. So, say, looking at the corner of the sofa. I would focus on what came after that in my quote-unquote memory of the event and try to do something that was different. Like if in the memory I turned over to my left side, I chose instead to cover my face. But then it's as if the memory unfolded to show me that was exactly what I chose to do all along. It gave me a real sense of the choices we have and our use of free will. How we will sometimes do anything to control every aspect of our lives. There were times I would peak and find myself drifting into what some of my friends and I now have titled the void, where it's actual, literal nothingness. Now, I know that might sound terrifying to our thinking, waking minds listening to that, but it was the most beautiful, loving thing I have ever experienced. It was devoid of everything, but at the same time filled with nothing but love. I felt nothing except love. I didn't feel breath. I couldn't feel the weight of my body. I didn't feel any pain or discomfort or elation or excitement. I didn't see or smell or hear anything at all. Pure love filled me. And I swear, once you get the opportunity to be engulfed in pure, genuine love like that, you will never be the same. The trip like that itself lasted for a few hours, but then when I was able to stand and kind of come back to this reality again, the real fun experience began for me. I could see sacred geometry in the sky and the grass, the code of the universe basically. The grass danced, the clouds spoke to me, there were spirit animals in the sky, I could see auras around trees and people, my oracle and tarot decks were talking to me, I could see the sound waves from my tuning forks and how those waves worked to heal the cells of the body. I was in pure bliss. And while that fun spiritual experience was one I won't forget, the emotional healing is also what keeps me turning back to psilocybin when I feel I need a little push. So this journey happened before I left my ex-husband. I entered the experience with the intention of discovering freedom. By experiencing unfiltered love, I received the knowing of what true freedom feels like. Because while I was experiencing that looping thought, I had a few moments where I felt that I didn't have a choice, that free will just didn't exist. No matter what we choose, it's already been decided for us. But then I felt the love, and it showed me that those were just visions of what could happen. The choice was still ultimately my own to make, but that even knowing the outcome didn't make me choose differently. So the right choice is always the one that makes you feel the most alive and eager to move on with. I found my worth that day too. I can still remember the feeling I had when that happened. I was talking to my trip sitter about how beautiful the love was that I felt, and he said something along the lines of, "You have found your worth." And it felt as if in that moment, my soul dropped back into my body, like I was back here again. After this experience, things felt way different at home. I had stopped drinking for the dozenth time before my mushroom journey, but returned not wanting to touch alcohol at all. Now, in the past, I had periods where I would be addicted to liquor, and I had periods where I would be addicted to beer. Neither sounded good to me anymore. Less than a month after my journey was when I finally had the conversation with my ex-husband that I didn't want to continue our marriage. Right around that time, I went to a graduation party where there was alcohol. I had a few drinks. I absolutely hated the way it made me feel and didn't touch alcohol for 6 months after that. Then I fell into peer pressure back in October to have one drink. I didn't even finish that drink, and now I have been sober since October of 2023. I believe I am still integrating things I learned from that trip. I get glimpses of those things whenever I microdose now. I typically do right around 200 milligrams when I do, which is not daily or even weekly. But on occasion, I will do a larger microdose, like 500 milligrams or so, which really begins to unlock those barriers for me. I find it helps ease me out of my stuckness. Both the low doses of psilocybin and THC, for me, allow me to look at the situations that I had stress and anxiety about with a clearer mind and less emotion around the problem itself. Instead of it being like, oh my god, this thing sucks, how will I ever recover or get through this? Psilocybin and THC are more like, oh hey, that thing sucks. How lucky am I to have things that suck to show me what I don't want so I can become more clear on what I do want. It's less anxiety and more acceptance that I will resolve it, and if there is no way to, it isn't that big of a problem to begin with. Now that I have dipped my toe into psilocybin and THC, I would love to try so many of the other medicines as well. What are your thoughts on the use of psychedelics as medicine? I'd love to hear about your experiences. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you next week.